Today is January the 20th, 2026, and this oral history is produced by Cliff Brockman. I'm Paul Yeager. Our guest today is longtime photojournalist, assignment editor, media coordinator, everything in between, guitar player for Smooth Groove. It's Mike Ortiz. Hello, sir.
Hi, Paul. How you doing? I haven't seen you
Man,
in a while.
gosh, it's so good to see you. Mike and I worked together for a number of years at KWQC Davenport, and forgive me if I call you Mo. Is that okay, or have you grown
That
up to a real name now?
that's fine. That name was given to me probably about 1 month, 2 months in as I started here at KWQC.
Well, you're a Quad City native, so before we even get into the Quad Cities, I need you to say, what are the four Quad Cities? Because this is
Oh
controversial
my
in itself.
gosh. Well, I'm going to say Silvis, East Moline, Moline, and Davenport. I grew up in Silvis, so that's why I'm going to say that.
Did you always, when you grew up in Silvis, did you always think TV was something that you were interested in?
No, not what I really had a passion for was weather, meteorology. Um, that was something my mom used to get mad at me because when we'd have a big storm, I would take off running out the door and I'd go sit up on top of the hill where I lived and just get rained on, lightning, thunder, and just totally enthralled in the weather.
So, how did you go from weather to news?
Well, it's kind of a funny story because I didn't know what I was an art major when I started out at Blackhawk. Then when I transferred over to St. Ambrose, as I was signing up, they were like, "Well, who's your guidance counselor?" And I was like, "I don't have one." And they were like, "Well, do you know anybody?" And I said, "The only person I know here at St. Ambrose is Father Charles Shepler." And they said, "Okay, he's your guidance counselor." So I went to see him. I had known Father Shepler from the time I was a little boy because he used to say mass at our church. And so he was the head of the radio and television department. And so he says, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I said, "Well, I'm not really sure." He's like, "Let's get you in some TV and radio classes." And that's how it all started.
And we're talking, what, the mid to late 70s here?
No, I didn't go back to school. Uh, I started at Ambrose in '85. So um, I had done a couple of years at Blackhawk and didn't do much with it and decided to go back to school a few years later. So, but it was 1985 when I started.
So you're doing those classes on campus. Then did you have to do internships or something?
I did an internship at KLJB, but I did. Uh, I worked in the television department down there for you know uh, making a little extra money. But yeah, it was a fun time. It was a fun time at Ambrose working with Duke Schneider and uh, you probably know there's a lot of media people that come from Ambrose that are still working here in the Quad Cities. So
So we're getting to about 1986, 87. It's time to get a job. How did
yeah,
KWQC?
I actually uh, I actually graduated in I think December of '86, but I stayed another semester at Ambrose, and in the meantime, I worked at like uh, Channel 4 on the floor crew, WHBF on the floor crew for like 3 months. And then I went and worked for a couple more months at WQAD and on the floor crew. And then Photog opened up here at KWQC. And so I applied and got the job.
So in 87, the name change had happened. So you really were hired by KWQC, not WOC.
Oh boy, I
Right? Wasn't that about
think it might
86?
have been WOC when I got here, but it might have been months until and it changed because the Palmers still owned it, and when they sold it, they had to the name had to change. So I think it was still WOC when I first started.
And you reported to 805 Brady Street, right?
Yes.
And you're sitting there today. What was the station like when you walked in that first day for full-time employment?
um, back then there were 12 photographers, and anytime somebody left, everybody pillaged all the best gear. So what they gave me the worst camera, everything, the worst tripod. Um, so everybody was scrambling around grabbing what they could from the best of that one set of gear, and anything that was broke or they that was my gear. Took me 3 weeks with my camera, and back then they were tube cameras, heavy tube cameras, and like the first week I was there, all all my video was like red, and I kept going into engineering, and I was like, you know, this camera isn't working right. So okay, it's ready to go. The next week it was blue, and everybody kept thinking, does this guy even know how to white balance? And I was like, yes, I white balance it. I've had issues with it. So it took like 3 weeks. One week it was red, next week it was blue, following week it was green. And then finally, after about 3 weeks, they finally got it right. And those were Sony, like I think it was a 6,000 heavy, um, big thick cable, and a 3/4 inch deck. I always say the Marine Corps didn't have anything on me because I could hump a good 150 pounds. You had a big old light belt that you put around your waist. I worked night side, so you had to have that light belt. And obviously, you back then, too, if you touched a light, you could burn your fingerprints right off. So
But you were young and spry, and therefore you could handle all that weight. Your body
I
could.
I
You didn't
I
wake up
could
in a pretzel.
I could handle all that weight. Yeah. Of course,
Uh,
I always tell everybody back then I was 6 foot tall. Now look at me, mm, like 5'5".
when you said 12 photographers, the building still had radio in it, I'm guessing.
Yes, yes. There was the radio station was upstairs. Yes,
And
yeah.
then the TV station, you mentioned 12 photographers. How many reporters, anchors, management? Do you
Oh
remember any of
boy,
that?
um, I did. I probably about the same. I think it was Don Ryan, and there were a number of other anchors that came through, um, but heck, I can't even remember the news director who hired me. John James. Man, it's been a long time. It's been a
Well, you've
long
had a
time.
couple over the years. I mean,
Yeah, I've
you're
had more
approaching
than a couple.
you're
Let me
approaching
see.
40 years at the station there. So of course, lots of news directors, assignment editors, general managers, and again, the building you come in, Quad Cities at that time, you're coming out, barely coming out of the farm crisis. What economically and those types of stories do you remember from those first days that you were shooting?
Well, I worked the weekends for a while. I think the farm crisis was already starting to end. Um, I kind of did a lot of fluff stories in that. They didn't give me the hard hitting stuff. They had the more experienced guys that were, wanted all the good hard hitting stuff. But again, a lot of those guys, really good photographers, kind of paved the way for me. Kind of showed me the way.
And you're working tandem most of the time, reporter photographer, or are there times you're out by
Yes,
yourself?
back then it was a reporter, photographer, whatever story you worked on, you came in and you edited together. Reporter would write, you would look over your video to see how you maybe wanted to put it together. You'd have a little brief discussion in the edit bay about how you think you both wanted to put this story together, and then you would edit together. You would bounce ideas off each other. And we edited from tape to tape, 3/4 inch tape to 3/4 inch tape. So
Did you like the editing process?
I loved editing. Sharon Derek, she's still here, and we work together a lot. And she used to get a little bit agitated because I was always an audio guy. I wanted to make sure that audio was just right and blended, eh, smoothly. And I still do that. I still do that to this day.
I one of my memories of you, Mo, is you had. In fact, I think it's just over my shoulder. It's a Shure mixer, and you would, when you were blending, you would have you were up and down, and now digital editing allows you to do it much easier. Just a couple of clicks, and you put rubber bands on things or dissolves, and the art's not quite there. The end product is there, maybe even better than it is, but still allows you to edit some.
Well, that was the real difficult thing, editing with 3/4 inch tape. If you wanted to do a dissolve, you had to take two tapes into master control, and they literally had to do the dissolve for you and record it on a third tape. And then you'd have to come in, and it was just, back then, tape to tape. You didn't have you didn't have all the bells and whistles. It was just strict, you know, single quick edits. And that was always the one thing too, is uh, hitting slot.
Hmm.
That was always, you had to make sure you hit slot. And
Otherwise, you
that
would
was
learn
the
the news
most
director's
stressful
name.
thing, because a lot of times, you're coming in, you know, a half hour before a show is starting, and you're trying to just edit tape to tape as quick as you can. And I don't think I ever missed a slot. I could have, but um, I'm gonna say right now, no, I didn't.
You're in charge of your history, Mo. So there you go. We're going to say that you never missed a slot. I'm
Yes.
not going to say here's the voice from the past that remembers when you did. You mentioned fluff stories. You're working weekends. I'm guessing newscasts at that time. There's what, 3, 4 a day. It's not the 2.5 hour morning news show. It's not the hour at
No,
noon. It's
none
not
of
the
that. It
4:30.
was.
You
I think we
barely you
had we had a noon, uh, maybe a 6 and a 10. I'm not sure we even had a 5.
and no morning show.
No morning show.
Yeah. So
No
that starts
morning
to
show.
change. You're moving along in your career. At what point did you move into a Monday, Friday chief
It.
photographer role?
I think, um, when I started in July of '87, I went to, and I was working a night side shift. I think within about a year, I was Monday through Friday dayside. A lot of the guys were already starting to take other jobs, going other places, And so I moved up pretty quick. I actually became chief photographer in '95. Um, Doug Rutherford at that time was our news director, and he called me in one day and he's like, "I'm going to make some changes." And I'm like, "Ooh, what?" And he's like, "I want you to be chief photographer." And so in January '95, I became the chief photographer. And then by then we only had I was in charge of 9 photographers. So things kept slowly, we kept losing photographers bit by bit. And now the lone photographer
Hmm.
is me now in 2026. So,
And I only remember about 6 to 7, maybe eight in the early 2000s. How has that changed the way news gets put together when there's not someone solely focused on the photography or videography of a story?
you know, I always took pride in putting on a good product and, be able to go home and say, did a good job. Nowadays, with social media, um, the MMJs uh, having to shoot, edit, uh, do all their own stuff. Sometimes I think there's just not enough time in the day to do an absolute great job. It's hurry up, get it on, do social media, do this, do that. It's tough. I watched some of the MMJs um, struggle a little bit to really give a really good product. And not to say that they don't do a good job. They all do, a good job. But um, as we used to call it back in the old days, massage a story. You want to really, make that thing sing. Um, Sometimes I think it's just hurry up and get some meat and potatoes and you know too many ways to get your information nowadays.
The sweetness of the great image, the sweetness of Mo, or the essence that would always excite you when you would, I remember photographers would want to show you, oh, look, Mo's going to love this shot that I just picked up. Those days are gone, it sounds like.
Now, well, I always a lot of the young kids now, and I call them young kids because they really are. I had probably been in the business 25 years when most of those folks were born, but I always I'll come walking in and I'm like, oh, and they're like, Mo, did you shoot some delicious video? And I always have my little levels of video. It's like good video, delicious video, and then ooh, I gotta smoke a cigarette. And that's my levels of shooting video. And I still get excited when I shoot some good stuff. So
And that's good to know that there's still that camaraderie among newsrooms, and you've been around that. You had a little time where you were not in the newsroom, or as a photographer, you had moved over to the assignment editor role.
well,
Walk me through some of what exactly were your terms, I guess.
Well, a quick little thing here. I walked into Doug Rutherford's office one day in March of 2004, and I basically told I was like, I, I can't do this anymore. I mean, I was literally, um, I was hurting, physically hurting. My back was bothering me really bad. I had um, a sciatic nerve down my leg. I kid you not. 17 years nonstop, never went away. Went to bed with it, woke up with it, and every morning I would have to take a scalding hot shower to loosen up. And one day I was like, I can't do this. And so I went in and I told him, and he was like, well, you know, we have to figure something out. And I kind of walked out of his office a little, I was sad, because I had suddenly made a decision, you know, what am I going to do? And I like 10 minutes later, I'm walking down the hall, and one of the salespeople walked by, and he says, hey, um, we're looking for a salesperson. Anybody might be interested in working sales? And I was like, yeah, me. And so I worked in sales from that time in 2004 till like June of 2005, and then that's when a new news director came in and came upstairs and said, "Hey, you used to be chief photographer. Um, that was about the time that Andrea Davidson, who was the assignment editor, left, and they were looking for a new assignment editor, and so I went down and became the assignment editor in June of 2005, and was there till 2010. Then I went back to being the chief photographer in 2010.
Because by the time you got to 2010, you're almost to the point of shooting video off the phone. That's a lot easier on the back. The cameras are lighter, the commitments are different,
Yes,
right?
we ended up using Panasonic, and they were little tiny cameras. Um, and so by that time, I hadn't been carrying heavy equipment on my shoulder. Um, my back issues had sort of subsided, and I was back in the game again. And it was fun to be a photog again. So,
Well, let's talk about that fun. Um, because is there a, I'm not saying junkiness to it, but is there a little bit of a thrill when there's a breaking news thing that you're sent to that you have to hustle to go get? Do you always felt, was that, or describe when you get a text or a call to send you to something that's a big deal or could be a big deal?
well, I still take pride in my work. A lot of it is the routine stuff. I mean, you work in this business for this long, everything becomes norm, but you can't take it as a you know just another you know I want to shoot good video and everything. As a matter of fact, I went to a fire this morning, heavy smoke, and so I know it's cold, um, and so I have my ways of getting good video in a short period of time, and that's what I try to show some of these young kids is you know shoot your clips nice and steady, commit to a shot, and don't touch your camera, because a lot of times when they come in to edit, they're going through zooms and focus and everything, and it's like that's time they don't have to edit. So um perfect example this morning, I rattle off 2 good minutes of some really good fire video, And, I'm not out there freezing because I'm zooming in and out and focusing and that sort of thing. It's little things that still carry me to this day.
How many fires do you think you've covered over the years?
Ugh. Ah, hundreds, hundreds. I, I remember when the case plant uh, went up in flames. Um, I had issues with my camera. One, it was very, very cold out, and two, my camera started uh, messing up, and so somebody had to bring a camera out to me. But that was one big, huge um, fire, and I was out there all day, along with Bob Palmer. Bob Palmer. He was out there with me. Him and I shot some of the most uh, memorable, in my opinion, memorable um, video. There was another time with Bob that um, it was a Saturday, and Charlie Wojciechowski was getting married, and he had asked me and another photographer, John Lesage, if we videotape his wedding. He was getting married down the street from Channel 6 at St. Anthony's. And so I'm all dressed up, got all my gear ready to go, and I get a phone call, and it's Doug Rutherford, our news director. He says, "You need to come in right now." And I'm like, do you have anybody else? I'm shooting a wedding. I'm shooting Charlie Wojciechowski's wedding. He's like, "No, you don't understand." He's like, "Duck Creek is flooding. You have to come in now." And so I was not too happy about it to have to tell Charlie, on this big day that I won't be there. He says, "Head down Brady Street." Doug Rutherford says, "Head down Brady Street and, start shooting video." As soon as I start heading down Brady Street, um, I look further down Brady Street, and I see somebody's garage literally floating across Brady Street. And I was like, "Oh my God." I got there, and I mean, it is a raging river, Duck Creek is. Well, back then, there was no such thing as drones. So and no cell phones. I get
Oh, so
called
you
on.
weren't even called on a cell phone even then. Okay.
No, no. Um, I can't even remember what year that was, but um, we had a trade out with a guy with a helicopter out at the Davenport Airport, and it was literally one of those helicopters that you see in the openings of MASH, clear bubble. So I went out there and we went up in the air. I was the human drone because I was literally strapped that beta cam on my shoulder and literally hanging out of that helicopter. Um, Bob Palmer was on the ground, and there were some Scott County sheriff's deputies tried to save a guy that was clinging to a telephone pole. Um, that whole thing between myself and Bob, we were communicating, and they were like, "They want you to come down and see if you can help these people." And the pilot says, "No, can't do it." He says, "I'll radio the National Guard." The National Guard came, and so the video is Bob shooting all this on the ground, like he's right there, and I'm shooting from up above, the National Guard is below us, and we ended up winning an award for that. But um, it's days like that it doesn't come every day, but it really gets you going when you are able to cover something like that in a great way.
And were you still in like a suit and tie when you're shooting?
No,
Oh,
no,
okay.
no.
You had already
I
stripped that off.
I I changed before I went, but
Uh,
um
I want to. There's a great story of yours, Mike, from a advertisement marketing campaign from the station. They had were going with the Hello Quad Cities, and you were assigned to get on a plane and go to New York City.
I I was I was told a couple days before, we're going to send you to New York. There's going to be a recording session um, with a woman named Florence Warner, who is going to sing this Hello Quad Cities. And that was a hello wherever, whatever, um, wherever you live. That was a big campaign. But she was going to be singing our Hello Quad Cities. So I get to the airport and they say, can't go. We're delayed, hour and a half, 2 hours. And I'm like, okay. So by the time I get to on the plane, we sit on the tarmac for about 45 minutes. We get to Chicago and it's delayed. I was supposed to be there in New York, downtown Manhattan, in a recording studio above the Ed Sullivan Theater. I was supposed to be there at 10 in the morning. I didn't get there because of delays and because it was really foggy. I didn't get there till like maybe 4 o'clock. And so I got light kits, camera, tripod, and I'm literally sprinting through the airport, LaGuardia Airport, and some guy yells, "Hey, need a cab?" I said, "Yes." And so he grabbed some stuff, and I'm not thinking. I'm flustered. I you know, I need to get there, and he throws everything in, and he's like, "Let's go." And I look, and I'm like, well, "This isn't really a cab. It was a light blue Cadillac." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I mean, he is flying down neighborhood streets, and it's just like you see in the movies. There's little kids playing stickball, and they're diving out of the way because he's zooming through these neighborhoods. And I honestly start thinking, I think I made a big mistake. I think they're going to find me in the river. And then uh, he gets out of these neighborhoods and we're going over the bridge and I see Central Park and I was like, okay, we get to the location and get to the Ed Sullivan Theater and he helps me get my stuff. Um, I get in the doors. I hit the elevator button. Door opens. Some woman walks out. I throw my stuff in there, and I'm going upstairs, and a hand comes in. Doors open, and I'm like, "What?" And she's like, "Going, are you from Iowa?" And I was like, "Yes." She's like, "I'm the person you were supposed to record." She's like, "I got another gig. I'm leaving." And I was like, "You got to be kidding me." And she looks at her watch. She's like, I'll give you 10 minutes. I said, "Let's go." So we ran up there, and the back then the beta cameras. I said, "Just give me one line uh, into my camera, and lip sync. Well, I blew two channels out because it was I don't know what happened. It was a mic or line level signal, and it blew the two channels. Luckily, on those beta cams, you had four channels. So I plugged it into the third channel after we figured it out, and they just kept playing that song over. And I was like, just keep singing, or keep lip syncing. And all that video I shot in like 10 minutes. And she's like, I gotta go. And she left. And so I was like, okay, I got to get some more video. I was like, guys, just act like you're doing stuff. And I shot a little bit of that. And the guy looks up and he says, what time's your plane leaving? And I was like, leaves at 7. He's like, 7? And it was already like 5:30. And he's like, oh. And so he ends up calling a cab. They help me get my stuff in. I jump in the cab, head to LaGuardia, back home. I didn't get to see anything in New York at all. It
And
was
you're
it was one of the most bizarre uh, trips and experiences I ever had.
you're in Midtown for all of 30 minutes and a campaign that they used for years, the video.
Oh, years, and they just reran it, and they reran it, um, and then shortly after they start rerunning it, um, Florence Warner passed away.
Oh,
And so I remember that day and how that one instance where I'm going in the elevator and she's coming out. What are the chances of that happening? What are the chances of that happening?
it was meant to be, and you were just
Yeah,
very efficient in your work.
it must have been.
Mike, I know that's a hard story to top, because that's still to this day one of my favorite stories I've ever heard. I think I've even told it on your behalf to others whenever we send somebody to New York or something. I was like, well, you could be like my friend Mo. And this one time, you've seen a lot of things. You've covered a lot of stories. You talk about floods. I mean, we had the Great Flood of '93. You and I covered the flood of '01. Then there was another flood in another year where you were doing all sorts of things. Technology has changed. Now you mentioned the drone. What else do you think has been massive changes in the industry from when young Mike Ortiz walked in 1987 to the Mr. Ortiz of 2026?
Obviously, the cameras. When I first started, you had probably about a 30-pound camera and you had probably a 35-pound deck. Your tripods were probably another 30, 35 pounds, you know. Um, then from there, they went to beta cams, which were still those things just on your shoulder were like 35, 38 pounds. And then things started, and you use tape. You went from 3/4 inch tape, big tapes like this, to little smaller beta tapes. Then we went to Panasonic cameras, which the cameras were small, light, um, and we used little cards to um, tripods became lighter. They start using carbon fiber and that lighting as well. Back in the old days, I used to have to order um, lights, and they would get hot, hot, hot. And you really had to be careful because you could literally hurt yourself with those lights. Lighting has changed, now everything is LED. Cameras are a lot smaller. Um, we don't use back in the old days. We had live trucks,
Mm.
and sending a micro. You'd have a mast that went up 30 feet in the air, and you'd have to point it to hit the signal that would send it back to the station. That has changed. Now we use a thing called TVU, and it's a little thing like this, has modems in it, and you just carry it in, set it up, and you're ready to go. Back in those old days, you had to drag cable 250 feet, and like during elections, if somebody was on the second floor of you'd have to go into the establishment, drop the cable down out a window, connect it to another reel, send it back to the truck, and that took a lot of time. I mean, you had to set up hours before. So I would say live shots are now, you could get there, you know, 10 minutes before a live shot and be ready to go in 5 minutes.
Yeah, you don't have to wait for the compressor to start to push the mast up. You don't have to
Right.
dial in the thing. You just have to make sure you've got a signal. You mentioned presidents or covering them. You've covered every president since 1987, going back to Ronald Reagan. What do you remember about covering presidents in your career?
Uh, I, it's like my first one, Ronald Reagan was, he came into town because at one time he worked here at WOC when it was WOC. And they brought him in to celebrate. Well, we went out to the airport, and this was none of that airport is there anymore. This airport had it was the old airport, and they stuck us out on a steel flatbed, and it was like 95 degrees. And we were waiting and waiting and waiting. And I mean, it was just smoldering out there. And, like all of us, we were like, we need something to drink and we need to go to the restroom. And the Secret Service wouldn't let us off there. And we're like, look, people going to have accidents here if you don't. And they agreed to let us all at once go. We went, did our thing, came back, and he showed up and he was supposed to speak. He showed up, waved, and took off, and we're like, oh, what? So that whole thing just didn't happen because he was late, so he didn't get a chance to. Uh, but Ronald Reagan, I was just telling this story the other day. Bill Clinton came in to Nichols Aluminum, and we had a pool shooter. Which when they do that, you got one guy from the Quad City area that uh, goes in with all the national media, and they said, "Go down there, see what you can see outside." I went, and so I'm kind of wandering around outside, and I open up a door, and it opens up, and I was like, "Look!" And I walked in, and just as soon as I walked in, they came around the corner, and next thing I know, I was in the pool, and I was like, uh, uh, you know, I don't think that could happen now, but Secret Service must not have done their job very well because I literally was in the pool, and I got there, and I think the reporter and somebody else there looking at me like, how'd you get in? I was like, I just opened the door and walked right in. I always thought that was funny. So, but did a one-on-one with Barack Obama. Um, Boy, it just yeah, every president since including Ronald Reagan. So
You go back to the Hello campaign. That was something that you always had to do. Hey, we need you to go get hellos. When you interact with people to get something, they still probably remember. So many people do remember that campaign, but they remember your station for whatever reason. I'm sure you get asked, whatever happened to that Paul Yeager, and you say, I've never heard of him. But I mean, the station has had a big impact on the community. Is really what I'm getting at, Mike. What's it been like to wear the station logo over all these years, and people say, I've watched Channel 6 forever? What's that mean to you?
Um, I take great pride in the fact that I've I've been here this long. I think there's only one other person in this building that has been here longer than me, and that's Mike Robinson, and he's in promotions. Doug Bierman left; he had 40 years. Paula left; she had 40. Um,
Oh, you mentioned
but
Sharon DeReek has been there almost the time you've been there too.
she's like 35, 36, 37. She came about a year and a half after I did. Marshall Lenz came about a year after I did. Um, and they're still here, and we all sit close to each other, and we always tell story. Oh, you remember when we did this? Yeah. So it's always good to have those two close by in the newsroom to kind of reminisce about the old days.
Hmm. Mike, what's going to be the lead line in your biography? How do you want to be remembered?
Boy, I don't know. That I always try to do my best, day in and day out. Um, I've had my complaints over the years. I've not agreed with certain supervisors, but that never stopped me from giving my all, you know. Um, that I cared. I still care, you know. I keep saying I'm going to retire. I've been saying that for 3, maybe 4 years. And I'm thinking that maybe in December of this year, I would do it. Yeah, here in the last couple of days, right before this interview, I'm thinking, do I want to do it? I'd be 6 months shy of 40 years. Why not? Why not make it to the 40? That's an even number.
It is an even
But
number.
I still care about what I do. I still want to pass along the things I've learned over the years to a new generation, you know. Um, that's about it.
A lot of people have gone through your tutelage, Mike, and have learned with you over the years. And no stop in the Quad Cities is complete without saying hi to Mr. Mike Ortiz. Mike, I appreciate your time. Thank you so very much.
Thank you, Paul. It was really good to see you, buddy.
Good to see you as well. I appreciate miss a lot of times, a lot of miles with you. And this has been an oral history for the Archives of Iowa Broadcasting. Our producer is Cliff Brockman. My name is Paul Yeager. Thank you so very much for watching, and keep looking every month for new oral histories from the archives.